Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling something that can be, well, one of the most stressful experiences for any new caregiver: infant colic. Okay, let's just dive right in. That relentless, just inconsolable cry. It can make you feel completely helpless, right? So what is really going on? We're going to get some answers.
Here's our game plan for today. We'll start with what colic even is, look at the causes, and super important, the red flags to watch for. Then we'll get into your soothing toolkit, some treatments, and finally, the path to getting through it.
All right, first things first. What exactly is colic? It's a word we hear all the time, but what it means in a clinical sense has actually changed a lot. This right here, this is the modern definition doctors use, and the key words you got to focus on are unexplained and that the caregiver cannot resolve it. So we're not just talking about a fussy baby. This is a whole different level of crying that just doesn't stop, even when the baby seems totally healthy otherwise. Now, you might have heard of the old rule of threes. Crying for more than 3 hours a day, more than 3 days a week. We've kind of moved on from that. Why? Because it was just a bit random. The new way of looking at it is so much more helpful because it focuses on the type of crying and how it affects you, the caregiver, not just on watching the clock.
And here's a slide that I hope brings a little bit of relief. There's a pattern to this. Colic usually starts around 2 weeks old, hits its peak at about 6 weeks, and then it starts getting better. By 5 months old, it's typically gone. I know when you're in it, it feels like it will never end, but this phase really does have an expiration date.
This is a really important concept to grasp. Colic is what's called a diagnosis of exclusion. What does that mean? It means a doctor isn't just going to hear crying baby and say, colic. Nope. They're going to do a full checkup first to rule out everything else, things like an infection or bad reflux, to make sure nothing serious is being missed. Okay, so if it's not a specific medical problem, then what in the world is causing it? This is where so many caregivers start to blame themselves. So let's just get this out of the way right now. This is not your fault.
The honest answer is, we don't know for sure. There's no single colic button. It's way more complex. Research points to a big mix of things. It could be neurodevelopmental, just an immature little nervous system getting overwhelmed, or it could be something in the gut, like feeding issues, gas, or even the balance of their gut bacteria. And of course, a stressful environment can play a role too. For most babies, it's probably a unique cocktail of all these things.
Okay, moving on. But before we get into any of the how to soothe your baby stuff, we have to talk about safety. This part is absolutely critical. You need to know when that crying might be a sign of something much more serious. Let's be really clear here. Before you even think about trying home remedies, you have to run through this mental checklist of red flags. If you see any of the things we're about to talk about, you stop what you're doing and call your doctor immediately.
Okay, pay close attention. A fever in a tiny baby, especially under 3 months, is a huge deal. It's a medical emergency. If they're lethargic, just floppy and unresponsive, if you see signs of dehydration, like fewer wet diapers, or if there's significant diarrhea or vomiting, or, and this is a big one, if the cry itself just sounds wrong, like terrifyingly high-pitched or extreme, these are all signs that it's not colic and you need help.
Okay, deep breath. Now that we've covered those crucial safety checks, let's get into your toolkit. These are the practical, non-drug strategies you can try at home to help soothe your infant.
You always start with the basics, right? Crying is just how babies talk. So before you jump to the conclusion that it's colic, just run through this little checklist. First, are they hungry? Simple enough. Are they overtired? Maybe they're overstimulated and just need a dark, quiet room. Could they be uncomfortable? Check the diaper, check if their clothes are too tight, or if the room is too hot. And sometimes they just need a cuddle. Start here.
So, if you've checked all the basic boxes and they're still upset, then you can move on to physical soothing. The classics are classics for a reason. Things like carrying them, gentle rocking, or a nice snug swaddle can work wonders. Skin-to-skin contact is incredibly powerful. Some babies also love a gentle tummy massage or doing bicycle legs to help with gas. Now, one thing to be aware of: chiropractic manipulation. The evidence just isn't there to support it, so it's generally not recommended. All right, what if you're breastfeeding? There are a couple of dietary things that might help a small number of babies. First, try to make sure your baby fully finishes one breast at a feeding before you switch to the other. If that doesn't make a difference, you could consider a short trial, like 1 or 2 weeks, of cutting out common allergens from her own diet, like cow's milk. But, and this is a huge but, you should always talk to your doctor or a dietitian before making big changes like that. Now for formula-fed babies, the story's a bit different. If your doctor suspects an allergy, they might suggest a special hypoallergenic formula. But here's the key. Don't just keep switching formulas on your own, hoping to find a magic bullet. It usually just makes things worse. If a new formula doesn't help within about a week, it's probably not the answer. And just so you know, things like soy formula or partially hydrolyzed formulas aren't really recommended for colic.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's talk about some of the treatments you might see on the pharmacy shelf, and more importantly, what the science actually says about whether they work.
This is probably one of the most important takeaways. For most of the stuff you can buy for colic, the evidence that it actually works is, well, it's pretty weak. But the placebo effect, that's incredibly strong. That means that because we, the caregivers, are so desperate for something to work, we perceive that it's working. And because of that, our #1 priority has to be safety first.
So what does have some data behind it? Well, there's one specific probiotic strain, Lactobacillus reuteri, that has shown some promise. And that number you see, -25 minutes, that's the average amount that daily crying time went down in breastfed babies after taking it for about 3 weeks. It's not a miracle cure, but it's one of the few things with some solid research.
And here are 2 other really common options. First, you have simethicone. That's the stuff in gas drops like Oval. Studies show it doesn't really work any better than a placebo, a dummy pill. The good news is, it's been around forever and is considered very safe. Then there's a simple sugar water solution. It can provide a little bit of pain relief for a very, very short time, but for managing hours of colic, its usefulness is pretty limited.
And that brings us to the final section. And honestly, it's the most important part of this whole journey, actually getting through it. Because you'll find that while the colic is happening to the baby, managing it is all about you, the caregiver.
I want you to really let this sink in. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's not a bonus. It's a core part of the management plan. It is 100% okay to feel like you're at the end of your rope. It is okay and necessary to put the baby down in a safe spot, like their crib, and just walk away for 5 minutes to breathe. You have to give yourself breaks.
Look, colic will end. It feels like forever, but it is temporary. The stress, though, is very real, and it's happening right now. The support system you build to survive this is what really matters. So I'm asking you to take a second right now and think about it. Who can you call? Who can you text who will just listen? Who can come over for even just 30 minutes so you can take a shower in peace? Building that team, that is the single most powerful tool you have.